Hi everybody,
Hello,
I'm Steve Ferry,
and I'm Jared Oxader.
the KMC champ. Alright, we're here to answer a bunch of questions about our crazy deck that won the KMC in Milwaukee. And we've been getting a lot of questions, and we're going to help discuss our card choices. So we're going to pan down to the deck and get going. Alright, Jared's been getting a lot of messages about Crystal Memory. And people have been asking, why is it a 3 of? And the only thing we can tell you guys is it's really just that good. Information is huge in this game. It allows for setup turns, it allows for getting the most powerful card and specific card in the matchup you're playing against. If we're playing against Saberbolt and we know they have a Gilliflame, we can buy a turn to Crystal Memory for Keeper of the Clouds or Scar Adorable, or just the most important card at the time. Playing it correctly is huge, and the information it gives you off of your shields is invaluable. It really is. Knowing what you have in your deck, the outs you can draw, and the specific cards that are shielded is huge. And it allows you to know how much you can rely on your shields too. Like if you want to take a damage there because you do have a 33% chance of hitting it out, or your Terror Pit that's still in your deck, it's really important. Anything you want to add to that, Jared?
There are only a very few matchups that it's not the greatest in, or that we wouldn't recommend playing this card in. Any control deck, if you're running blue, you need to play this card. The only things we kind of determined it wouldn't be good in as a 3 of is anything that you're building. If you're building around Bottle of Wishes, you don't want to play this card. Bottle of Wishing into a Crystal Memory is just really suboptimal.
It doesn't really affect the game state as much as you want, and we've learned when we have been playing this game, affecting game state immediately is very important. Getting the most value out of your cards is the best. Also why we don't run Keeper of the Clouds. It's just too slow. It's another thing we'll get into later.
Yeah. And then the other, if you're playing the Neuron deck or anything with blue that's really aggro based, Crystal Memory is just too slow. Turn 4, you want to be dropping another threat and killing them, or dropping another threat, setting up the kill on the next turn. It's very bad at 4 for any kind of aggro. So now the Trial and Error. The Trial and Error, we originally were running at 3. We play tested a lot. It's really good. It digs really deep, and discarding a card is kind of whatever. Sometimes you know what cards you don't need. You can just ditch that card. The biggest thing with the Trial and Error, though, the reason we didn't cut it completely for 3 of Spy Mission is because it sets up your Dracothanes supremely. In any aggro matchup, they bust a shield, they get your Trial and Error. You can look at them, and you get like 2 blockers and Death Smoke. Okay, Death Smoke's pretty terrible if they're playing hasters, so you can. Oh man, that was a bad example. But if you rip 3 blockers, you live in Christmas land. You keep 2 to your hand and you pitch 1, and then a few turns later you got the Dracothane set up. The Trial and Error is just set up the Dracothanes. If you're opting to play the Keeper of the Clouds, which we said we didn't really like it, you could set up the Keeper of the Clouds as well with the Trial and Error.
But then you're buying 2 turns.
Right.
Casting the Keeper and then waiting to cast the original spell, which is, there's that unknown factor too. If you do actually get the specific or the correct card that you want, and then they drop like a Bolt Tail and you played that Keeper play to get a Death Smoke, well, there goes your turn. That was a waste.
Yeah.
Another big thing with Trial and Error too I found in testing is seeing that 3rd card is hugely relevant. It also recoups very well off of a Skull Shatter if you do get Skull Shattered first in the control mirror. This is probably your best recuperation spell. It gets you back into the game, and it gets you into games that you shouldn't be winning after Skull Shatters, after just losing. And the Shield Blast is great too if they don't kill you immediately.
And then on any turns where you have any of the birds in play already and you want to play that turn 5 Lyra or whatever, it's an easy mana decision.
Yep.
There are only 2 of, but you also have draw at 3 and at 4. It's just cheaper, better in the late game if you need to draw into something and then cast it right away. Issel's a 1 of. In this deck, there are a few 1-ofs that we use as tech, and it's perfectly okay because we run a 3 of Crystal Memory. Issel just works really well with the Stormspark Blast, Orion, and Lyra, and it's also very effective as a finisher and slowing down any kind of aggro deck. If you have 2 blockers and you drop your Issel, the aggro deck's not going to want to swing into you, A, because you're blockers, and B, because if they swing, you're just going to counter swing, maybe kill a dude, and then just keep their guys locked down.
It buys you tons of turns.
Buys you tons of turns. Yeah, that would be 100% the biggest reason for playing playing Issel of the Frozen Wastes.
All right, moving on. Oh, one more thing I want to add to the one-ofs. We run a lot of one-ofs. It's weird, but with Crystal Memory, your whole deck is a toolbox. If you know what's important, and we really stress on testing and playing tons of games, and if you want to be successful in this game, it's like any other card game. If you know your matchup, it's the same with Magic. If you know what's important, and you've played enough games, and you know where to sync your specific card, or search for, it's really going to win you more games. It really is. So, logo scan, there's not much to be said here. It's just the best.
Right. I found that it is like the best turn 3 play in the control matchup. They're not going to have any threats. If they're not the greatest control players or they miscalculated what you're playing, they dropped a blocker on their turn 2 or their turn 3, and then on your turn you just draw more cards. If you're on the draw and you're playing the control mirror and you're worried about the Skull Shatter, the logo scan sometimes makes an easy mana decision, unless you're running the Razorkinder puppets and you're trying to draw into them to beat them to that option. Then obviously you want to cast the logo scan. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I guess another thing is really late game when you're stuck at like 10, 11 mana and you have Win on board, but they got a blocker of some sort, you can logo scan, and if you're a luck sack, you can rip into your Lyra, or...
Like a champ.
Like a champ.
Like this champ.
I mean, you can just rip into anything, and at 3 mana, you can easily cast whatever else in the deck after drawing into it. Spy Mission. Spy Mission, one more than cost 1 more than logo scan. So we only did the 2 of. At 4, really, you want to be Crystal Memory on that turn. Or starting your setup for your early dragons with your Luxes, and it's like double Lux on turn 4. It's just like, that's threatening. Your opponent's going to
worry. That's the Nutter Butters, as we like to call it.
And then the Shield Blast ability, really terrible when they're trying to Alpha Strike you. You're like, oh, I guess I'll draw 2 just in case you don't kill me this turn. But really great against the aggro decks. It just gives you more juice. Makes your, with both of these draw spells, makes your mana decisions on the turn 4, turn 5 really
a lot
easy.
easier.
Yeah, you don't end up mana zoning something.
Your Andromedas or your Orions. You can save your silver bullets for later. Having more cards and gathering more information to set up your turns is huge in this game. Also, it kind of makes the most out of your turns. And I want to explain that a little, because this game, you really have your 4 drop, just casting this on turn 4, but deciding what you mana zone is also pretty crucial when you make the most out of your turns, because you may have to sacrifice a turn 5 play to make a turn 4 play, or a turn 6, or so on. Getting this information, seeing those 2 extra cards, is really, really relevant. Probably not explaining it the best.
The more cards you see, the more you know about what's left in the deck.
Information.
Yeah,
information. More information. Go to the Firebird.
Nick's pretty straightforward. We do run the 3 of. Not as good as protecting your dragons as Lux, obviously, but it is just... I mean, it's more card draw, more information. Back to the same argument with these draw spells. And it gives you more bounce back from a Skull Shatter. Like, they Skull Shatter you, you rip your Nyx, you drop your Nyx, you're like, whatever. And then the next turn you draw a dragon. Okay, cool. Slap the dragon into play, draw a card. Now you're kind of getting yourself back into the game, and you can set up some really crazy shenanigans. With the 3 of, it's really neat. If the game goes obscenely long and you can get all 6 of your birds in, your Lyrs are free. So that's
we've had that once in testing. That was in the control mirror. It was pretty silly.
Yeah, your Lyrs are free. You're drawing 3 cards. That's Christmas land, but yeah, you never know.
Magical Christmas land. All right, let's move to Lux. We're gonna save this hot tech for later. Lux. I don't think there's much to be said here. It's just a staple in any real Dragon deck. It protects Andromedas. It protects Lyras. It protects Dracothanes. It protects Isils. Issel. And it comes back off this. Not much to be said.
You can play the counter aggro with this card as well.
It does proactively swing into their nixes too.
Yes.
That is relevant.
That is. Yeah. It's moving on.
Moving on. Lyra. I don't think there is much to be said here that Jer hasn't said already on his first video. It acts as another removal spell, really. It's a removal spell on a body, or you can ice something down to get through the damage you need.
And it's really important with the card next to it that you kind of pay attention to what's in your hand at certain times. I did have a play in one of my game 3s where I had an Andromeda in hand and had a Lyra and some other, like, I think I had 2 blockers, and I don't know if the video's up yet, but I snap dropped the Andromeda without really thinking about it because Andromeda's so good. When I had a better play of Lyra, icing a creature, blocker, was just, it like, that play wins me a game. This play loses me a game. So sometimes there are situations where your Lyra is just
Stone cold better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where casting an Andromeda on turn 9 isn't as good as casting this guy on turn 9 too. We've found in our testing. We call this guy Andromeda Junior.
We'll get to that though.
We'll get to that.
And on to Andromeda. Really great. It's just really great against any of the aggro decks. In the control mirror, it doesn't perform as well just because they're going to be dropping their own Andromedas. It makes the game, it'll slow things down. It's in there to slow things down for you and give you more turns to drop more of your threats and be able to counter swing and win.
That's huge. Yeah. Also, with a lot of the new control decks running Water Spout Gargoyle, is that what it's called?
Water Spout Gargoyle, yeah.
He just mills you. And I think that was discussed on one of the KMC videos CVH posted, that Water Spout Gargoyle is a huge and great way to attack this deck that most people haven't seen.
Right.
Just recasting an Andromeda is not going to win you the game. You can have all the shields in the world, but you're just going to die. You're going to deck yourself.
The other thing too is when you're shielding so many cards, you could be very well shielding
your outs to the Water Spout Gargoyle, like your Skull Shatter, and they're not going to attack you. They're not going to engage your shields.
No. So, yeah, just really make sure you're doing. Well, I mean, with any of these cards, with any deck you try and play, you got to really make sure you're doing your testing and figuring out what plays you need to be making against each matchup.
Is what is important.
Let's talk about our blocker suite just as a whole.
A whole.
Yeah. We went with 3 Stalkers, 3 Keeper of the Clouds, and Sunstalks, and 3 Scar Doubles, 3 6/9. That's 9 blockers. Am I missing any of the blockers? No. We went with the 9 blocker suite because we wanted to mitigate any damage that a rush deck could do against us with a nutty draw. Like when a rush deck gets their best draws possible,
they do have a chance to beat you.
Yeah, and this allows you to get to this or this or that. Your deck is no good.
It buys you turns.
Your deck is no good if you can't. These cards are no good if you never get to cast them.
And from our testing, we found the most frightening cards really are Gale Flame, just some of the fast aggro decks, Sunstalker. You take a shield, but you also can swing back into the powerful attack guys and not lose anything. And instead of trading. And
it comes down a turn earlier than the Star Lantern. A lot of people love the Star Lantern. If you're playing against a very good opponent, they're going to know how to play around the Star Lantern. It's going to come down to a turn later. It's just not as good. And for 2 mana, to be able to rip into it and just drop it on turn 5 is fantastic. We'll be talking about these a little bit more when we get to Dracothane. Our tap down suite now.
Well, with this guy too, Gale Flame. It's the only card you really care about in that matchup. We do have Scar Adorable, but a lot of the decks are running Comet Missiles, so we like having 2 outs to Gale Flame. That's important.
Or the Heat Seeker.
Heat Seeker too. This dodges that too.
Yeah. Counter swings. Counter swings into Herald of Infernus as well.
Yep. It also blocks Herald.
The ruling on that is since they kill each other, neither of them wins the battle. So Someone messaged me that, so it's not like I knew that off the top of my head. Whoever you are, you'll see this, you'll know. So it trades with the heralds, and you don't have to worry about giving them a free trigger. So that's also
all right. Now to the tappers, because we've got a lot of heat on this one. This guy right here. Why we are playing this and not 3 of these? Because most control decks are playing 3 of these. The Storm Spark Blast is great. It's a great card, but it's only as good. It's dependent on how far ahead you are when you just cast it. It buys you a turn. It allows you to win games that you're probably not. You shouldn't win. Have no business winning. But we like being a little bit more proactive. Having a Storm Spark Blast kind of on a guy is really important. And this guy is so scary. People just don't want to kill it because they don't know what could happen. This guy could turn into a Lyra, Lux, and Andromeda. I mean that's Christmas land, but. It's a bottle of wishes and a Storm Spark Blast built into a clock, and that's huge.
Yep, and really great game one. Game one, they don't know. I mean, obviously everyone knows the list, but they're not going to know how heavy you are into your white, and just killing it and possibly getting 3 things on board is just really kind of rough. And if they don't kill it, you just kill them.
Also, if you can curve and live in a Christmas land like Jared did on his finals matchup, where he hits this guy into this guy. That's backbreaking.
It's pretty fun when you don't have to counter strike into their Andromedas and Dracothanes because they're just tapped, and you have Luxus in place, so he's protected, and you just do whatever you want for however long you want.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay, we went through Squeaky over there, right?
Yeah, we covered Squeaky in the black screen.
Dracothane, we kind of covered him. He's we call him Andromeda Junior around here because he can be just as good as an Andromeda in certain situations, and he's a huge clock. The triple breaker is huge. Another reason why we do run the 3 Scar Adorables is because reanimating this into any of the guys that can attack is basically their whole life the next turn. Triple shield break, and plus 2 more guys that can attack is all 5 shields on their next turn. That's frightening. And in this attrition war that we've noticed with like a lot of control decks, this guy's really important. We had him as a 1-of, and we found him to be so important we bumped him up to a 2-of because sometimes we just had to monozone him.
Yep.
And we always wanted that second copy in there just so we could have him. He allows you to just play him and just go for the win the next turn.
Yeah. It's back to the Andromeda thing. He's a mini Andromeda because he can also pick up 2 blockers. Yeah,
which serves as the other shields.
Right. I mean, if you're playing the control matchup and you pick up 2 blockers and like Storm Spark Blast, you're like, okay, you got me, sure. But against like an aggro deck, it's just as good as Andromeda because you get your 2 blockers and you block whatever they're going to throw at your shields anyway. Yeah,
I think pretty much covers that.
Terra Pit and Bone Blades, I think we talked about together.
Staples. Just, they need to be in your deck.
Yeah, if you're not running 3 of, you better have a really, really amazing reason. I don't know.
I don't even know.
It'd have to be...
The only reason to me would be is I don't own them.
Right, yeah, that would be... that would be the right answer. Death Smoke, 3 of. Definitely...
This is a metagame call here. We were testing a lot with 5-color dragons, and 5-color dragons is a problem for this deck. Death Smoke is just another out to an Infernus or just a huge fatty. And we already have so much for the anti-aggro, anti-saberbolt that we really wanted to better our matchup against just the mirror or any other huge fatty deck.
Yeah, anything that sticks and then sits there and stares at you for a turn before it can swing.
It could very well go down to a 2-of, depending on your metagame. If you're playing against a lot of rush decks, just go down to 2 or 1. We made a metagame call. 3 of them is pretty okay. So now we're going to some more Savage tech, and this is probably this is gonna make people ask questions. Why 1 Skull Shatter?
The Skull Shatter, when we had multiples of it didn't. A lot of the discard we kind of talked ourselves out of playing. The Skull Shatter is just amazing in the control matchup.
It is amazing.
Unless you're going second.
It's just so situational that we found it to be important just a crystal memory for it, and just hope it's not in your shield. That's really why it's a one of. If you're running multiple copies, it just gets redundant.
Yeah.
It doesn't do enough sometimes against some decks.
Right.
They drop their hands. They might have one card left in their hand. It just doesn't do enough. Going first, it's so much better. Or if you're playing like the Saberbolt decks or the decks that can ramp into it, hitting it on turn 5 is just game breaking. But in this style of deck, we found it to be just, it gets one card, and normally it's not good enough.
Right.
As a one of, it's good with crystal memory. This guy,
Dreadclaw Dark Herald.
anti skull shatter.
Anti-Skull Shatter, yeah. We got him sitting right next to him. I mean, sometimes you get your hands where you're like, Andromeda, Lyra, Lux, Dracothane, other card, and you're like, wow, I got a lot of juice here. And then you're trying to ramp to it, and then they shatter you, and you're like, well...
Or you mono zone them, and you draw more, and then they skull shatter you, and you're like, well, I can't win. Now I have an ult. Yay!
Yep, and he double breaks, and he's a dragon.
So, I mean, you can net 3 to 4 cards off of him sometimes. The later the game goes, the better he gets.
Really, really terrible worst case scenario. With the Lux, he draws you more cards.
Yep.
If you have a Lux in play for 6. Pretty awful situation. I had to do it in a game, though.
Just a cycle.
Yeah, just to cycle it through. Just card quality, I guess what you call it.
If you've seen the original list, we had a Bottle of Wishes in there. Don't even play that. I don't know why he played it. We had it as a Cyber Dragon.
Cybersphere Dragon.
And Cybersphere Dragon's pretty okay in this mirror because it's a renewable resource. I mean, they can terrapit it for days. They can try to kill it. It just keeps turning sideways. And you always have that resource available to you. Don't even play them. Just play more draw.
Yep. 2 cards that a lot of people that are really familiar with this style of deck that are missing are 2 cards. Just the card is Razorkinder Puppet. When we play tested, we totally talked ourselves out of it. It's a 6 drop
For
3,000.
It wasn't good enough for our anti-aggro matches. And really, there's 2 different decks here when we built this deck. There's a anti-aggro deck and there's an anti-control deck. You really have to stick to your guns and know what's important in each matchups. And Razorkinder Puppet, we felt we didn't really want to sacrifice anything to the control to give it to the, or anti-aggro to give to the control, and we should have. It should be at least a 2 of in here, and these are 48 cards. I would just add 2 more Razorkinder Puppets to this list.
Yeah.
Everything else is too important to cut, and it's not going to really lower your probability of drawing one half of the deck or the other. But it's just too good not to have. Hitting their Skull Shatters or hitting their Andromedas and stuff is way too important.
Yep.
Also, it's more proactive too because this deck can turn on the mid-range deck and attack and still maintain board state with removal. But it needs to be in there. I would add 2 to this list. 3 is a little bit much. We are running 3 Crystal Memories again. Toolbox for the whole deck. This card is insane. To me, this card should be banned.
Yeah, we'll see. As we get more spoils out from the next set, we'll see how much better Crystal Memory gets. Yeah, he briefly touched on the 2 decks idea. If you look at this list, we've got anti-aggro, anti-aggro, anti-aggro. You just keep splitting the list up, and eventually you end up with one side being all anti-control decks and one being anti-aggro. And you just make sure you kind of keep an even split. You don't want to put too many from one to the other. And
and stick to your guns when you're playing.
Yeah, sometimes there are situations where
the games break down where you have to make odd decisions. But if you play test enough and play enough, you should know what's really important.
Yeah, so that's kind of our comprehensive as we can think of right now breakdown of this list. Like at the end of the day, though, you just got to make sure you get time in with your list. If someone asks you why you're running such and such a card, you should be able to say for this, this, and this. And then if they ask you why this many, you should be able to because of this, this, or this. If you ever get asked about a card and you're like, oh, well, so-and-so is playing 3 of it, that is the wrong answer.
That is the... We hear it in Magic or a lot of the other card games. Well, so-and-so is running this card. that's not a good enough reason. Play test it. Sit down. Don't just copy a deck online. Play it. Find out why it's important. Find out its strengths and weaknesses and play it. We've only been playing for a month and a half, if that. We've literally just got into this game.
Yep. Yeah.
But we're doing a pretty good job on trying to critique cards and figure things out. And we may not be right. And this may be not the correct build, but it is a metagame oriented deck. We kind of figured. Also, at the KMC, there was 2 copies of this deck in the top 8. Maybe with a couple minor changes because he didn't have the cards. A friend of ours.
Oh,
and,
yes, yeah.
And he was #1 seed going into it.
Yeah, we had 3 of our 4 teammates that went out to the competition top 8.
It's 3 out of the 4.
Yeah.
And we had another person. He had to just play us. Or I can't go. I'm a dad. I work here at Atomic Games, so I lent Jared the deck. I gave him the deck. He performed well. Andy Ballant did very well.
Yep.
This game is great. I recommend this game to everybody. Props Wizards
Yeah.
to bring this game back and balance it out. Here at Atomic Games, we're going to be doing a lot of Kaijudo stuff because this game is so much fun. And a lot of retailers out there, if you push it, people will buy it. All you have to do is demo. I demoed to probably 10 Magic players at our store. Everybody picked it up and loved it.
Yep. So if you're planning on running anything similar to list, make sure you're getting the playtest time in it with the deck and know exactly why you're running the cards you're running. And
know what's important when.
Yep. And best of luck those of you that do get the chance to play this list before the next set comes out and makes this list probably obsolete.
Add those puppets. Yeah. I'm Steve.
And
Old champ.
I'm Jared Oxlader.
And see you guys later.